Welcome to this very special edition of the KAJ Masterclass Live, the show which ensures that you profit from your time spent here with experts, either through their industry insights, information, or simply learning from them. And today we have Dr. Andy Garrett. He is the founder of True North Radical Resilience Movement, world's leading authority on identity and resilience. He is an organizational psychologist, keynote speaker, author, and a podcaster. Welcome to the show, Dr. Andy.
Thank you. Grateful to be here. Appreciate the opportunity to have this conversation.
You are welcome to the show, Dr. Andy. You are welcome to India in this online form. And I'm sure not just in India, but a lot of people across the globe will benefit from what we are going to talk right now, what we are talking right now. So we'll be talking on unlocking radical resilience. So first, to understand the term itself, we hear about resilience, we understand a bit about resilience, we are trying to learn about resilience, but what is this radical resilience all about? Help us understand. Let's start with this.
Yeah, I love that. Someone actually asked me earlier today if I could define resilience without actually using the word resilience. So I'm gonna do my best in doing that. Resilience just essentially refers to the ability to bounce back up. My daughter is 10 years old. She has a resilience journal. Unfortunately, she has a psychologist for her dad. And in the journal, they gave this metaphor of, dropping an egg versus dropping a bouncy ball. And when the egg drops, it cracks. There's fragility to it. When the bouncy ball bounces, it comes back up. Radical resilience is taking it to that next level where not only does the ball bounce back, but it's like those super bouncy balls that each time it falls, it picks up momentum. And it's about the ability to not just bounce back, but bounce back better. So that you're learning from every time that you have a setback, a failure, you're extracting the best value out of that so that you're able to quickly and efficiently get better, stronger, wiser, so that you're piling up as much growth and wins as possible.
Right, Dr. Andy. So to understand resilience and radical resilience, how does it work with organizations and individuals? Now, in organizations, is it about the resilience of the management people, or is it about the culture of the organization? Help us understand in that backdrop.
Great question. Honestly, I'd say it's really both. What makes our resilience model different is it focuses first on the true north identity. That's as an area of expertise. When you know who you are, you know what you stand for, those core values, the mission, the purpose, all those things that really, make a company what it is. That, for a company, they spend a lot of time often, investing in what their reputation is. Their reputation is like the outward facing sense of how you want people to perceive you to be. Your identity is how the people on the inside, what they know to be true. How you treat your employees, how the customers that you've worked with forever, the connections you have to your local community, or if you're virtual around. And when that's clear, and that all your best decisions emanate outwards from that. And so in building, radical resilience, the word radical means to get to the fundamental essence or core of something. It can mean extreme too, but we're building resilience into that fundamental identity of the company. And when you build resilience around that, anchor it to the core values, anchor it to the purpose and mission, you just naturally, organically operate in a more resilient state. And the decisions that you make and the way to bounce back are much more likely to stick when you attach it to things that are deeply meaningful to the individual and to the organization. But the identity of the organization is so dependent upon the leaders, right? So when you teach the leaders and they build that culture, kind of has that top-down effect of, the trainers training the trainees, and they bring kind of that understanding of what points true north for them, and they have the confidence of knowing that they're resilient. It has this incredible effect, this trickle-down effect, where the employees know that they're in the experience, the presence of strong leadership that isn't going to abandon them. It's not going to blame them. It's not going to micromanage them. It's going to give them the tools and equip them to get through. There is no pathway in business to being successful in a sustainable way where you're not going to experience significant struggles, setbacks, failures. So that's a given. But knowing you have the tools to be resilient in those moments, to quickly extract the value out of those, so you can get back to growing with purpose, the true north style, that's what makes this radically resilient. And it's incredibly powerful.
Right, Dr. Andy. Now, in our lives or in organizations' life, when you need to always keep being ready for such a thing, being always resilient. Now, how do you test that in your day-to-day work? Should you create difficulties in your personal life so that you can test whether you
Yeah.
are resilient or radically resilient? How do you do it for organizations? uh, is there a way of some sort of a, like they have the bank for the banks, the stress test, that whether you are up to the mark? Because when it comes to it, you will directly need to be resilient, otherwise
Oh
the
yeah.
company will have its negative impact. So help us understand with that.
Well, it's a great question. I don't think that you're going to have to manufacture those, because I think that life and just the current, the realities of the modern workplace. There was a Harvard Business Review magazine that came out, and it talked about companies that invested in resilience during COVID. And they found that the companies that invested in resilience training consistently outperformed their non-resilient trained counterparts, and that they often emerged as significant winners. Unfortunately, for a lot of these companies, they stopped investing in resilience training when the COVID crisis seemed to, kind of get resolved. And they said it's a huge mistake, because it's always a matter of just, if or when that next, crisis or setback. And it said that we're currently in an age of uncertainty. It's the new norm in business, is to expect the need for rapid change, the ability to deal with setbacks and crises. It's a chaotic time in the workplace. And so I don't think you need to manufacture it. I think you're going to get ample opportunity to be able to practice resilience just in dealing with. I think the emergence of AI has got a lot of people really terrified. And I believe that the companies that train their employees to be most resilient, which is really the ultimate optimization attribute, the ability to respond in agile ways, to rapid change, is going to best equip teams to implement AI and to maximize the benefits of AI.
Right, right. So, in terms of this particular resilience thing, how do teams and organizations and individuals cultivate this particular sort of a thing? Is there a way to get started? Only person like you can come in and tell them, or is there some things that they can do internally which helps them create this radical resilience for themselves?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think to be radically resilient, you should have a process in place that enables, like, what makes you resilient. We've used the metaphor sometimes of the difference between how cows and buffaloes respond to incoming storms, and people tend to respond to this. A cow, when it senses a storm is coming, their natural tendency is to start to flee. They try to run and avoid the storm. Unfortunately, they're not the fleetest of hoof, so the storm quickly catches up to them, and in their desire to avoid dealing with the storm, they end up spending the maximum amount of time in the bad weather. Buffaloes, on the other hand, they collect as a herd, right, protecting the young and the vulnerable, and then they run directly into the storm. So in doing that, they get through the storm in the quickest way, most efficient way possible, spending the maximum amount of time in the good weather. What that means for a company is, when you know what makes you a buffalo, using that metaphor, you know what strengths you have, you know what core values that you have, because when we feel connected to what matters most, we feel like we can overcome just about anything. Right? We know what people are in the right seat in the bus, what character strengths they bring to difficult times that enable everybody else to operate at higher levels. So when you've given a name and you've defined those attributes, those core values, the purpose that make you more resilient, it enables you not just to say, well, I want to be like a buffalo, but it knows, what makes you a buffalo. And so you start just naturally addressing difficult moments, addressing conflict quicker. We had a client recently who had this great manager, was running a store, was doing well, but they were extremely conflict avoidant, and they were ready to resign. A position that he'd worked 10 years to get up in the business to. And because he was dealing with a really difficult employee, it was causing all kinds of stress, and stomach is being upset, and acid reflux and all that fun stuff. He was ready to quit. And the boss said, hey, we just invested in this radical resilience. Will you stick with us? We went through the program, and at the end of it, the employee created yet another moment of stress. The boss called him up and said, hey, are you okay? Are you going to quit? And he said, no, I'm a buffalo, and I know what makes me a buffalo. I didn't realize it. I've always been this way. And he leaned into a really difficult conversation. He had to end up letting that employee go, but he did it with integrity. He did it in a way he felt great about, and that team is performing, that store at record profit, and that person has had breakthroughs not just in the business place, but he's having breakthroughs in his marriage, in his personal health, because resilience that works at the business is the same set of tools and skills that works in real life too.
Right, right, Dr. Andy. Now help us understand one thing. Can radical resilience or resilience can be a negative thing in certain circumstances? For example, as an individual, if I am a very resilient person, I will not let go of a situation which is not so good, either in relationship or either in terms of work. So how does that?
Yeah.
Even in organizations, as they call in Silicon Valley, if you have to fail, then fail fast. But some people may be so resilient that may not look at it that way. And what happens is that when you are not able to look at the writing on the wall about the outcome, you take it personally, and it can impact your morale for the next for your future, both for organizations, as you said, organizations, and also people mindset, and also for individuals. Should one calibrate these aspects of the good part of radical resilience or resilience, or the different part of radical resilience?
That's such a great point. And yes, I do think it's absolutely possible to be too resilient. We differentiate in our model between, what we call true north radical resilience and white knuckle resilience. White knuckle is more of, let's just use willpower, right? Let's just, keep getting back up and just, use complete force to keep pushing through. And sometimes that's necessary in business, right? Sometimes that is just what you got to do. And unfortunately, I think culture sometimes highlights or rewards, seems to kind of, put people that can do that on a pedestal. But I think that's a poor model, because, willpower is like a gas tank. When you use it, it depletes, and then you've got to refuel and recover and got to kind of build that back up. And so tapping into resilience, especially when it has kind of that rigidity, right? That sense of, even though I might be heading in the wrong direction, I'm going to refuse to quit. And so it can have a stubbornness to it, and it absolutely can be counterproductive. That's why I think the differentiation, when you know what point's true north and you're secure in that, I do think it better equips you to know when to pivot, when to have psychological agility to recognize that, hey, this isn't working, and maybe we do need to approach it a different way. But sometimes you just need to stop and make a complete 180 in the way you're handling things. And so that requires a really high level of ability to process, that agility to process efficiently and effectively, and to be able to apply, kind of cognitive creativity and innovation to something. And that doesn't come from just, old school, I'm going to muscle my way through it. In many ways, that is unsustainable. It's inefficient, and it can be expensive. It can cost you a lot in the long run going that way.
Absolutely. And especially in organizations, you see, or individual leadership, they may not look at they may look at their stubbornness as resilience.
Yes.
And that might not only impact them, but it can impact the whole nation, the whole company. You see the situation we have come to, the great resignation, quiet quitting. So how does one know that this is my stubbornness and not my resilience? Is there a way to, look at ourselves when we are taking decisions in our life?
Certainly requires, I think, a high degree of self-awareness. And, I think part of the true north self-awareness or radical resilience, it incorporates not just a very specific set of tools and strategies. I mean, it's a highly specific strategy that's customized, to the corporate identity and to the leaders. But one of the things why we operate from the identity first, define true north, and then we build proven resilience strategies and principles on that. But when you're secure in who you are and what you stand for, it really does enable you, just like if you've ever been in a relationship where there's just a high degree of trust, there's a sense of, I know this person to consistently be honest, I know they have integrity, that allows that the part of the brain that tends to operate out of emotion and tends to be rigid, which is where the stubbornness comes from, that we stick with even when it's hurting us. It allows that part of the brain to relax, and allows us to engage with our prefrontal cortex. And that's the part of the brain where our values are. That's where we can, creatively problem solve. If we can't get into that prefrontal cortex, then oftentimes we are going to rigidly respond and double and triple down on, losing, directions or losing decisions. And so, and again, that is, if we're looking to optimize our leadership, if we're looking to optimize, our business success, you have to be secure in who you are, and then have resilience principles that help you in moments where everything goes, the wrong direction, to be able to very quickly respond to that, knowing how to find your true north.
Right, right, Dr. Andy. You talk about your grandfather as the true example of radical resilience. What about today's time? Uh, are we in a better situation to get to true radical resilience, or are we in a we need much more of this, but we are not prepared for it? How do you see these two parts? And let us understand more about your grandfather. Why you consider him as a good example, and how do you see our present state in terms of our preparedness to achieve radical resilience?
Yeah. So my grandfather, his name is Carl Karcher. So he actually started a fast food chain here known as Carl's Jr. Uh, Nationwide, they actually have him, I think, all throughout the world. So he's a very successful businessman, but his greatest success was really who he is or was as a person. He passed away in 2008. And I was fortunate, especially the last 10 years of his life, we really were best friends. And I had a front row seat to see how he valued people. He always said he wasn't in the hamburger business, he was in the people business. And he valued relationships. He constantly talked about his core values, but then you saw how he spent his time and organized his life. And there was such consistency, which just creates trust. Made me feel safe in his presence and being around him. A lot of times when you're around very successful people, they're driven by insecurity. They need to be constantly told how amazing they are and how great they are. And that wasn't him at all. When he was around people, he was constantly pouring into them. And so I experienced this incredible level of authenticity at a really high level. He had holistic success, being married for almost 70 years, having a tight-knit family. He was talking about family values, his faith that was a driving force for him. And when he passed away, he had thousands of people that showed up to his funeral, and we received hundreds and hundreds of letters. He wasn't perfect by any stretch of the imagination. He had his flaws for sure, but he had this massive impact. And so when I put together this program, I really was drawing upon the lessons that I learned from him, but unpacking it with my psychologist hat on, kind of using concepts and terms that he didn't necessarily, know and use. But when you use it as a framework, it provides a very consistent, reliable outcome. It provides a high degree of authenticity, a strong sense of identity, and these resilience principles. They're proven, right? And so, yes, and I think now more than ever that these principles are so necessary. I think resilience is the skill set of this modern workforce that's most necessary. I think there is already a gap between the companies that are most resilient, especially ones that have a high sense of purpose and can create a culture of resilience. And I think the gap between those companies that are most resilient and those that are lacking a clear, resilient process or culture is only going to grow with the increasing need to rapidly respond to challenges, the increasing use of AI, and for a variety of other reasons. There's never been a more critical time to need radical resilience.
Absolutely, absolutely. There is much to learn from you, Dr. Andy, about this stuff. And this is just one episode. You have a podcast of your own, being the True North movement. So tell us, so that the audience can learn more about this concept from you directly from your podcast.
Yeah, please. The True North movement is really it focuses on reaching out to men, but we've had many women who've reached out, whether they're raising sons, whether they're married to someone, who have found it to be extremely beneficial. But we're just trying to really create, some clear direction and understanding that when you define those things that are most critical, when you have a strong sense of purpose, having a secure sense of self, it's amazing. A lot of times when I start working with people, they start from a place of insecurity, and they're like, when I figure out who I am, I'm not going to take, anything from anybody. And if you don't align, then you can kick rocks. But that's coming from a place of insecurity. When you start to really become secure in who you are, you become such a better leader. You become more tolerant, more loving, right? More accepting. And you deal with challenges instead of seeing them as threats, like existential threats to, your personhood. you're able to confidently respond, standing on the solid foundation of knowing who you are and what you stand for. And so it's really powerful. So we talk about in season 1 is leaning into some stories, both our personal ones with me and my co-host, and then season 2 is all about resilience. And we go deep into what resilience looks like in the boardroom, in the bedroom, kind of different settings, what resilient leadership should look like and feel like, and the consequences that when you lack resilience, the way, I saw a commercial recently, it was for an airline, and it was had a woman who was a nervous flyer. And she said when she gets on the plane, she looks to the flight attendants when they start to hit rough air, right? They don't call it turbulence anymore, it's rough air. And she said that if the flight attendants look nervous, that signals to her that things are really in bad shape. But if they're calm, cool, and collected, then it signals to her that everything's okay. People, when we're in leadership positions, they're constantly looking to us. And if we're reacting in stressful times by blaming others, by avoiding dealing with it, it signals to everybody that you're in a chaotic environment, that you shouldn't feel safe, and everybody's ability to make high decisions gets stunted. But if they look and they know, like, hey, I know that I'm in the presence of a true north, resilient leader, then it signals to them that, hey, we can all buckle down. We're going to get through this, and we're going to get through this staying true to our principles and the things that make us who we are.
Absolutely. There is much to learn from you, as I said, and I'm sure a lot of people would like to connect, understand from you, and learn from you, and also get your expertise for themselves. So what is the best way for them to connect with you, Dr. Andy?
Yeah, but please, the True North Movement podcast would love for anybody to come and check that out. And then, my website is the best place to go. It's ag-thrive.com. Important to put that dash, otherwise you'll go to an agricultural site, but ag-thrive.com, and you can read more about our corporate resilience, our resilience challenge. I think you'd asked earlier on, and it stuck in my brain, is this something that you need, someone like me to come in and train? Or, yes, we do workshops, I do speaking engagements, but we also have resilience challenge, and there's phenomenal exercises that we love. I'm so passionate about the need for this material that I've been willing at times just to give away the free resilience challenge or exercises, resources that I know you'll get immediate benefits. You can apply these things. They're highly practical, they're proven, and when you apply them, they give immediate results. So would love to be a resource for anyone out there that's looking to really bolster or enhance their sense of resilience.
Wonderful. With this, it's a wrap on this very special edition of the KAJ Masterclass Live. Thank you so much indeed for joining us.
Awesome, AJ. Appreciate it.